PARSHA SHMOS. We're beginning the new book of the Torah. And for the first class, I want this to be a bit of an overview of what's going to be happening and what new changes are taking place in this book. So let's get right into the first pasuk. So if you look at the sheet that I gave you, the second source is the first pasuk. Why is it that way? That's just the way it comes out. This is how the new book of Exodus begins. Ve'ela Shemos b'nei Yisrael, and these are the names of the children of Israel. Haboim Mitzrayma, who came to Egypt. Eish Yaakov, Ish Ubeisobo. Yaakov, with Yaakov, each man and his household came. Okay, seems like a fairly benign pasuk, right? Now, the problem with this pasuk is that back in Parshas Vayigash, 2 parshas ago, we have a pasuk very similar to that. Now we go back to the first source. And as Yaakov goes down to Egypt, it says, Ve'ela Shemos b'nei Yisrael. These are the names of the children of Israel. Haboim Mitzrayma, who are coming down to Mitzrayim. Yaakov, Ubanav and his sons, and then it goes in lists. Bechor Yaakov, Ruvain, the firstborn of Yaakov, Ruvain, etc., etc., etc. Just like over in Exodus, it lists the name of his 12 children. So nearly exact psukim, exact verses. Why does the Torah have to do that? Number one. Question number one. Question number two, let us look at the Rashi, the third source. An Eila Shemos. These are the names of the children, and then it lists the 12 children. So Rashi says, even though Hashem counted them in their lifetime, back in Parshas Vayigash, he already listed the 12 children. He counts them again after their death. Why? Lehodia chibasam, to make known how precious they are to him. How is that? Shenim shelu lekochavim, that they are compared to the stars. How are they compared? Shemotziam umachnisam b'misra b'shmosam, because Hashem brings out the stars and brings them in and brings them out by number and by names, as the pasuk says, Hamotzi b'mispar tzvam l'kulam b'shem yikra. He who takes out their hosts by number, he calls them all by name. So what is he saying? Just like there is a concept, whatever it means, that Hashem brings out the stars. I guess he moves the stars, the constellations move, and they become more dominant at certain times. And Hashem calls them by name, the stars. So he calls the Jewish people by name again. He loves us. So he loves us, so he counts us often. So that's a very nice thing. Yeah, why is he counting them right now? You know, that's what nice it is. So, like, why at this point in time is he counting them, listing them? You know, you can always list many times. So why do you list at one time and not list at a different time? Okay, so we have to know what's the message over there and what's so unique about saying that he loves us over here. Why over here? Okay, next question is, now this is a question you have to be a very open thinker here. Okay? The problem is you know too much information. It's going to cramp your thinking ability. Once you know something, you don't think anymore. That's the way people are. If I did not know there were 5 books to the Torah, pretend you do not know there are 5 books to the Torah. All you know is there's 54 parshios. Right? So now, if I would, and you go through every parsha, and you learn the whole Torah, okay? Now, and you don't know about this division of the books. Now I would say to you, okay, I would like you now to take these 54 parshas and divide them up into sections, thematic sections, and do it as you wish to do it. Okay, maybe I'll give you a hint. You have to divide it in 5 parts. Where will you make the break? Do you understand what I'm asking you? So the problem is you can't do that because you know what the breaks are already. So your minds won't allow you to freely think. But let's just assume that you could freely think. So where would you make the break? Now, it's all nice stories, right? Martin, I turned it on. We started Bereshis, and it's all stories. Story. The children go down, the children of Yaakov go down to Egypt. And the story goes on. And then they die, and then a new generation comes, and then it's a terrible king, and all the sufferings that the Jewish people have. And then Moses comes, and there's an exodus, and that goes on for PARSHA Shemos, and Bo, and Va'era, and Bo, and Beshalach. He finally sends us out, and he splits the sea, and then God gives us the Torah at Sinai. And then all of a sudden, in Parshas Mishpatim, all of a sudden, and these are the laws that you should follow, and get all these civil laws. And we start talking about building the Mishkan, okay? And we finish building the Mishkan, okay? So now if I asked you, okay, where's the first book ending? What would you have said? Be honest. If you wouldn't have known the answer. I don't know, if I was God, I'd say, well, it's all leading up to the giving of the Torah at Sinai. And once the Torah is given at Sinai, the Torah becomes an altogether different book. It is not so exciting. It becomes much more legal, not too many stories. That's where you get the big drop-off. Everyone's interested. Friday night, there's always a Dvar Torah to say at the table, but once you hit Mishpatim, then you go into building the Mishkan, it's a whole different book. That's why, the secular critics, they maintain there's a number of authors. The ones who don't believe in God and Torah from heaven. Okay? So what is the question that we are really asking here? Is why did God divide the Torah the way He did? Now, if you would be learning this with a secular person and going through the Torah, they're going to ask you why are there 5 books? I don't know. Why did they stop the book in the middle of the story? I don't know. So that really, as a matter of fact, when the truth was that when we come 2 days before the giving of the Torah, what did God tell Moshe to do? He said, okay, now write the Torah for the first time, start from Bereshis, and go up until Parshas Yisro, where the Torah is given. And now go read that to the Jewish people. And then later he adds more as God instructs him to write more. So you kind of see that this is like a kind of a good breaking point. Even God himself told Moshe, well, let's write up until Sinai, and then once the Torah is given at Sinai, it becomes now a law book, not a story book. So that's like an amazing question. That's an amazing question. Okay, a few more questions. I got a whole list of them here. We'll see. Don't let me get too far, because you know what happens. I don't crawl out of it. But another question we know. It says, "Vayokom melech chodosh." A new king came up in Egypt. Asher lo yada es Yosef, who did not know Yosef. It's not on the sheet there, but that's what the Torah says. And he did all kinds of terrible decrees against the Jewish people. So the Targum, the Aramaic translation of a Targum Onkelos, who gives us not just translation in Aramaic, but gives us insight, that's in the 4th source, says something very interesting. It says, "V'kom malka chadat al Mitzrayim," a new king got up on Mitzrayim, and doesn't translate the words that did not know Yosef, simply as they did not know Yosef, but he takes the liberty, and he's getting this from Chazal, from the rabbis before. He says, "Delo mekayim gzeres Yosef," who did not fulfill the decrees of Yosef. That's how he translates it. Not just he didn't know Yosef and made himself like he didn't know and began, his anti-Semitic reign of terror. It says he did not fulfill the decrees of Yosef. So the first question you have to ask is, what decrees of Yosef did he not fulfill? What was the significance of those decrees? And why did he not maintain them? Another question to ask. Okay, let's just do one more piece. And this is such an incredibly important medrash. So important for people to know. The fifth source, and I have it in the Hebrew, and I also wrote it up in the English. The Medrash Tanchuma gives it very specifically. What does it mean, a new king? Let's read it. It says, and a new king arose. But isn't it Paro? Isn't it the same Paro? So rather, the Egyptians, this is a piece of the story, many people don't know this part. Rather, the Egyptians said to him, let us start up against this nation. The Egyptians came to Paro and said, we want to start becoming anti-Semitic to the Jews. He said to them, fools! Up until now, we are living from them. And how can you start up with them now? If it wasn't for Joseph, we would not be alive. Okay. So what did they do? Since he didn't listen to them, they deposed him for 3 months. They removed him from power. So it seems that Paro was a fairly ethical guy in the beginning, but then he lost his power. The populace didn't like his position, so they removed him from power. Okay? Until he said, I am with you in all which you do, upon which they restored him. Therefore, the text says, a new king arose. That's what it means, a new king came. In other words, the old Paro, it's the same Paro, but it's a new Paro. Because he was king, removed, and then re-elected. I think you had that, I think in Canada, you had one prime minister, who was prime minister and then lost, and then he won back again. Was that such a thing, or am I dreaming? But it's rare. It's a rare thing. Once the guy's out of power, usually don't come back to power, especially in the king business. It's pretty rare. You get rid of a king, you do a coup d'etat, and he comes back. It can, but so that's what it means. A new king came along. Okay, so he didn't want to do it. So the question is, we have to understand, what is the understanding of Paro's flip-flop positions over here? I mean, he's a real politician, obviously, but what was Paro's initial objection about owing gratitude to Yosef? I mean, listen, it's already been 23 years after Yosef dies. It's 23 years after Yosef's death, because nothing really happened until the last of the sons of Yaakov died. Did any of this trouble begin? So the initial family is dead. So how long does Paro have to show gratitude to the Jewish people? Right? And gratitude is not really a non-Jewish concept like it is in the Torah. So he doesn't have to keep that aspect of gratitude. So what was bothering so much is there's not a burgeoning Jewish group of people. It's not that many Jews. So okay, that's it. We were nice to you guys a certain amount of time and finish. So why does he want to defend them? It's like, since when are non-Jews such big lovers of the Jews? That Paro, to the point that he had to be removed from power. And in fact, he did have a good argument. So what changes his mind afterwards? Okay, you could say, well, he was out of power, and he didn't like being out of power. That could be a simple answer. He had a ethical feeling, and he says it's not right ethically. He was a superior ethical guy, right? And then he out of power for 3 months. I guess your ethics can change. But that doesn't seem to make, that's an easy answer. It's too easy of an answer. If he was willing to lose the power, usually, you're not going to change your ethics that quickly. Maybe, but I think it needs a deeper explanation. That's the first half of the Medrash. Now let's look at the second half of the Medrash. Continuing. It says, when Yosef died, the Jews nullified circumcision. The Jews decided to stop circumcising themselves. They said, we'll be like the Egyptians. Let's be like the Egyptians. You've got to remember, in those days, they did not have their private washing facilities. So they washed in public wash bathhouses. And I'm sure they didn't have stalls like we have now, right? When you go to the mikveh, you can have your own little shower compartment. And therefore, the circumcision is a very overt an obvious distinction that a Jew has from a non-Jew. So they said, let's be like the Egyptians. Here's a very frightening line. When the Almighty saw this, he nullified the love with which the Egyptians had for them. All of a sudden, one day, the Egyptians wake up and they wonder, why do we like these Jews? And all of a sudden the opinion to the Jewish people changes. Very important medrash, which we'll elaborate on shortly. Then the medrash goes on and says, a new king arose and introduced harsh decrees against them. Therefore the text says, and a new king arose who did not know Yosef. And did he not recognize Yosef? Same question. So the Medrash answers, this is comparable to a person who stoned an image of the Duke. Analogy. Somebody has the picture of the Duke on the wall. Somebody stones the image of the Duke. The king said, chop off his head. This is what he does now. Now he stones the Duke. Tomorrow he'll do it to me. Let me chop his head off. Similarly, Paro doesn't know Yosef now. He doesn't know Yosef now. Tomorrow he will say, I don't know the Almighty. That's what the Medrash says. So what does one thing have to do with the other? You know, that's one thing. Like this whole Medrash, it's all chopping up over here. You're dealing with the first part where Paro was deposed from Paro, comes back to Paro. Then it says the Jews nullified circumcision. Like, what are you throwing that into the Medrash for? You're just fitting in all the information you have to say over here, just throwing this in. And this conclusion over here, also, you know, why does one thing have to follow the other? Just because you start up with the Duke, does it necessarily mean that you're going to start up with the king? Not necessarily. You don't like the Duke, so you don't like the king. And more than this, where does the Medrash seem to answer the question? The Medrash answers, did he not recognize Yosef? So how does the example answer the question that he didn't destroy Yosef? The question is, he didn't remember Yosef? What do you mean he didn't remember Yosef? So he didn't destroy Yosef. He didn't throw stones at Yosef. So what's going on over there? Okay, one more thing. Okay, you know what? That's enough questions. It's enough. So I'm going to ask more. So let's come back to the beginning. All right, so what are the basic questions? The basic questions are, we had one verse in the beginning of this book and one verse before that seemed to say the identical thing. Second question is, why is the Torah breaking Bereshis where it breaks and starts Shemos where Shemos begins? It says Paro did not know Yosef. The Targum says he didn't do Yosef's decrees. What decrees were there with Yosef? The Medrash discusses Paro's flip-flopping back and forth. What's the source of that? Why does it mention the Jews stopping circumcision? What's this whole thing with the Duke and the analogy with the Duke? These are the questions I want to discuss. So, the first thing we have to understand is that when the Torah repeats two verses that are nearly identical, and one pasuk is found in the book of Exodus, and one pasuk is found in the book of Bereshis, that means that have to do with the themes of those books. You'll find many times where a theme is mentioned in one book of the Torah, mentioned in another book of the Torah. And it's not a repetition, but there's a different aspect that's being brought out because the theme of a certain book has one theme, and the theme of another book has another theme, and we can mention both aspects, but one item, because it can be two aspects in one item, which I will explain in a minute. But you find this in many places. You find that the holidays are mentioned in two separate books of the Torah, because there's two different aspects to holidays. And maybe when we get to holidays, we might talk about this. But the point is, if there's a pasuk in the book of Bereshis and another pasuk that's almost identical in the book of Shemos, we have to look at those psukim in context of the theme of the book to understand if there's a different message over here. So let's take a look. So what's really happening is we're talking about a concept called Bnei Yisrael. Bnei Yisrael, the children of Israel. And that is mentioned in the book of Genesis, and it's mentioned in the book of Exodus in the context of the 12 sons and the 70 souls. And there is what we'll call a Bereshis context and a Shemos context. And we have to understand what that is. So what really beckons the question is, so what is Bereshis really talking about? What's Shemos really talking about? That's the real question. So let's look at those two verses again. Okay, look carefully at those two verses and see if you notice something that is different, even though you got to look inside a little bit now. Sorry to strain you. But look at the two verses. Ve'ela, the one in Bereshis. Ve'ela Shemos b'nei Yisrael haboim Mitzrayim Yaakov ubanov. And the second one, Ve'elu Shemos b'nei Yisrael haboy Mitzrayim es Yaakov ish u'beiso ba'u. Do you see any nuances that are sharply different? It's the same context. The content is nearly the same. Present and future, not really. No, that's not significant, but there is a significant thing.
Came and coming.
That's minor.
Okay.
Minor. Although there are other things. You do raise a good point that brings other issues, but not for what we need over here. It is a point, but that's for a different class. You got something there?
Well, one is about Jacob and his children.
One is about Jacob and his children.
And the other one is more general.
And one is more general. Well, let's look at it. So you're right on the first one. It says Yaakov ubanov, Yaakov and his sons. Does it say Yaakov and his sons in the second verse?
No. It seems to indicate like more each man.
Well, let's state it even more. Each, ish ubeso. Each man and his household. So in the first pasuk in Bereshis, it's Yaakov and his sons. So how do we define the 12 men? As children of Yaakov. How are these same 12 men described in Sefer Shemos? As men who have a household and that aren't children. Now that is going out of your way to make a difference. The Torah is going out of its way. It's the same idea, but it's telling a totally different thing. So in the book of Shemos, the 12 tribes are introduced as heads of households, while in Bereshis they are introduced as descendants of Yaakov. You see the difference there? So what's the Torah trying to tell us? So in Bereshis, we're talking about a patriarchal society. A father with his children, his grandchildren, his great-grandchildren, but it's Yaakov's home. And it's a very large home. Right? But it's Yaakov. Right? When they need to buy food for grain, as we learned a couple weeks ago, who makes the decision? Yaakov. Yaakov tells them if they do go down to Mitzrayim, if they don't go down to Mitzrayim, they're dealing with this difficult viceroy. Yaakov says this is what we're going to do. Right? So it's a patriarchal society where Yaakov controls the purse strings. That's what it is. In Shemos, we're talking about men and their own households, mean that each one has their own purse strings. Right? In other words, we're not talking about a patriarchal society anymore, but we're talking about a people. We're talking about a nation. The Jewish people in the book of Bereshis is a family. They're not a nation. And a family is a father and his sons. That's a family. But the familial connection is not mentioned the second time. It's Yaakov and Ish uBeiso Bo. They're not even called his kids anymore. The focus is now a man with his household, many men with many households. There's more than one family per se. There's a lot of family, and we would call this a small nation, a people. Now, what's interesting is that Paro himself identifies this. Paro himself identifies this because when you look in the Chumash one day, in Pasuk Tes, Paro calls the Jews, Hinei Am B'nei Yisrael. This nation, the Jewish people, they're becoming a lot. And he identifies the change in the Jews. He's been watching these Jews for a long time. And he saw when Yaakov came down with his children, he said, oh, that's a nice family. This is a family, immigrant family. But as time passes, it's not an immigrant family anymore. It is a nation of people. Each tribe is a self-sustaining unit. So now we ask, why is the break where the break is between the book of Bereshis and the book of Shemos? It seems to be all one story. Well, the Torah doesn't make themes by stories, but makes themes by themes. And the theme of Sefer Bereshis is that it all is related to a patriarchal society. We're developing the individual, while everything in Shemos relates to the emergence of a nation. That's the difference. That's the thematic difference between the two books. And we'll see that's very critical, this difference. You can look at people, how do you view yourself, as just a family? Or do you view yourself as a nation? So you can ask, what's the difference? There's still the Jewish people. Is the difference in number? So what's the difference in a nation and a patriarchal society? So now if we turn to the other side of the notes, you'll see what the difference is. And this is, of course, a very famous Rashi. Right? The famous Rashi, Bereshis bara. In the beginning, Hashem created the heavens and the earth. So the famous Rashi says, because we know, as I've said many times, the proper grammar for in the beginning is, how would you say it in Hebrew? In the beginning is not Bereshis, but Bareshis. Bareshis. Ba means in the. Be means in. So Bereshis would mean in beginning, which is incorrect Hebrew. Now, what does the first word of the Torah means? That's pretty bad. Ask most people, what does Bereshis mean? In the beginning. It's wrong. You follow me? You understand what I'm saying? You ask your kids from school, what does Bereshis mean? In the beginning. Well, you could go talk to the schools that are teaching your kids. Okay? That's not what the words mean. I mean, I'm sure even Art Scroll. I don't know. Maybe I don't know what Art Scroll says. But, so anyway, so Rashi says, Ein hamikra hazeh omer ela darsheni. This verse is saying, translate me. The words themselves are screaming, we don't have any explanation to translate the words. So therefore, rather we have to translate like our rabbis understood it, that the prefix be can mean in, but can also mean an abridgment of the word bishvil, which means for the purpose of. In Hebrew, the prefix be can mean in, it can also mean bishvil, for the purpose of. So now we read it like this. Bereshis means bishvil. So he gives two meanings, Rashi, and we can skip the first one for the time being. We'll come back to it if we have time. But bishvil Yisrael, for the purpose of Yisrael, shenikru reshis, that are called the first ones. They're called the reshis tfuah, the first of his crop. So let's retranslate the pasuk. Bereshis bara Elokim es hashamayim v'aretz. Bereshis, bishvil reshis, for the purpose of the Jewish people did Hashem create the heavens and the earth. Now this is such an important Rashi. You know, if you don't know this Rashi, you don't know history and you don't know Torah. You don't know anything. This is like such an important Rashi. And that's what the pasuk has to mean. The rabbi is saying, that's what it says. It doesn't mean in the beginning. It doesn't mean in the beginning. It means for the purpose of Reshis. For the purpose of, you know, you talk about the First Nation status. Right? Right. First Nation status. The Inuit, whatever. The First Nation status is the Jewish people. Yisrael. God created the world, everything, for only one purpose. Yisrael. Finished. That's what the Torah is saying. Does everybody understand that? This is not like an esoteric translation. This is the simple implications of the text. You with me? Anybody want to say anything? I'm afraid to talk. Is it okay? All right? So therefore, the Jewish people are the purpose of the creation. That's what the Torah is saying. What's the implication of that? What's the implication of that line? Take the Jew out of creation and what happens? There's no purpose for the world, which means the world will cease to exist. That's what the text is saying. Marshall, you want a sheet? I got extra sheets. I think I have extra sheets. Okay? You understand? So that means the life-giving force of the world. And the justification for the existence of the world is the Jewish people. If there'd be no... Remember, God created the world for a purpose. God wouldn't make a world not for a purpose. The purpose is to bestow pleasure upon mankind. He can only bestow pleasure upon that group of people who want to be the recipients of that pleasure. There will be a group of people yet to be determined from the creation of the world who are called Yisrael, which means Yashar El, straight to God. So people want to have a relationship with God, and if they want to have a relationship with God, God will bestow His pleasure and kindness to them, and therefore everything else in the world will be the tools to make that happen. Okay, so that's what it's there for. That's what the world is for, and without Jews, there's no need for a world. Now, this is true when you reach a state of Yisrael, the Jewish nation. God created the world that there should be a nation of Jews. And if there's a nation of Jews, there's enough people that will have enough impact on the world that's where God wants to bestow His love and kindness to, that it will manifest and spread to the rest of the world, and that's what the purpose of the world was about, which is not the case for a patriarchal society. God did not create the world for a Jewish patriarchal society for just a handful of people. God did not create the world for the final result for there to be an Abraham in the world, and that's the end of the story. He did not create the world for there to be a Yitzchak, and that's it. Now, of course, there are important steps along the way, without doubt. But it wasn't the end game, Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov exist for only one purpose. So a Jewish people will finally come out of them. And everything they did was always for the purpose, what's going to be later. That's the whole idea of a similar button. What the patriarch said was a sign for what will be later on. Avram stopped at certain places. He prayed. He did certain things. So later on, the Jewish people are going to have to need my support and guidance of what I've already done and the spiritual energy I put in for them. But God didn't create the world so Avram should live. And that's the final beauty of it all. No, and not for Yitzchak and not for Yaakov. No. So therefore, Bereshis, we're talking about the creating that from which the nation will emerge. That's what Bereshis is. It's that beginning step of from where the nation will emerge. But the emergence of the nation, that which is the definition of the world. You with me so far? Now this has many foul implications now. Lots of implications that we as Jews should remember. Okay? So now what happens? Yosef goes down to Mitzrayim. He's the viceroy. There's a hunger in the land. Yosef makes a number of outrageous decrees when he is the viceroy of Egypt. Number one, any Mitzri, any Egyptian who wants to buy grain, what's the first thing I do besides give money? What did he have to do? Yeah? Good. He had to circumcise himself. Yes, all those Hamites had to circumcise themselves. And they went to Pharaoh and said, what Mishigas is this? We have to circumcise it. You do what he says. Had to circumcise himself. Another decree Yosef made is that he moved everybody in the country. If you lived in one part of Egypt, you were moved to another part. Everybody was moved around. And you didn't end up next to your neighbors. The whole country got shifted around. Why? So Rashi says, it's in the 9th source, you could look inside, but I'll just say it outside, is that because he knew his brothers were coming down soon. He didn't want his brothers to feel like strangers. So how can you make sure that the brothers won't feel like strangers? Make everybody feel like strangers. Make even the Egyptians feel like strangers, because they're all going to be moved around. You lived in the southern part of Egypt, now you're in the northern part, and your neighbors go to the eastern part, the western part, and therefore the brothers won't feel so uncomfortable. Now let's think about that for a minute. That might be very good for Yosef and his brothers, but how does he justify that to Pharaoh? Of course, he wanted them circumcised because they will be a little bit more moral, so that his family moves into a country that's a little bit more moral. I don't want to get into what circumcision has to do with morality, but that's one of the reasons. But how does he justify this to Pharaoh? An upheaval of an entire country? No seemingly rational justification, just so 12 people shouldn't feel uncomfortable? What right does he have to do that? So there can only be one reason that Yosef knew, and Paro, let's just hang on, and that Paro had to believe as well. And you have to look at this. He goes to Paro, he says, listen, you think that I'm doing this to make my brothers comfortable, huh? And you could claim that Egypt has done more than enough by giving us the land of Goshen and letting me bring my family here. And you Egyptians have been very nice to my family to let them emigrate to Egypt, giving us lodgings but to wreak havoc and all this. But Yosef says, you got to realize, it's not just a question. It's not only because of the existence of my family and me that in fact we're surviving here in Egypt. Don't look at it as just, a little bit of gratitude to us. He's saying the whole basis of our survival in Egypt and the whole world is because of the Jewish people. He was teaching Paro this first Rashi. This Rashi says the whole reason the world has any justification is because of the Jewish people. And therefore you can't oppose our wreaking havoc, because if it wasn't for the Jewish people who had to eventually be in Mitzrayim, then Egypt would never have been the beneficiary of the 7 good years and the explanation of the dream and becoming a superpower, because if it wasn't for us having to go there, you never would have become a world power. This Rashi is telling us that the whole history revolves around the Jewish people. So it's not that you were rich and now, since I was a nice viceroy, you're doing me a favor. Like when you look at the story, you're wondering, like, what was going through Paro's mind when he let Yaakov and his family come in? Oh, Yosef's a nice guy. He's a good viceroy. His family's here. We'll do him a break. We'll let his family come in. It's a nice thing. It's a politically wise move. You want the viceroy to be happy. You want his family here, this and that, and everything else. And for that, okay, I'll give you a piece of. Don't wreak havoc with my country. Yosef is saying, no. That you're not just doing us a favor. We're doing you a favor. You got to realize we are what the whole world revolves around. And where we go, there has to be success. Because we have to live as Jews. And since we have to live as Jews and we have to promote ethical monotheism, so where we go, that place will be blessed because of us. It's not that you are doing the poor, destitute Jewish people a favor. It's we're doing you a favor by our existence. And since God already has planned, for whatever reasons he has desired, that we should live in Egypt, so Egypt has to be a superpower. And if you are a superpower because of us, then you have to do things to accommodate us. And Paro understood this. You know why? And Paro could not argue this. This isn't just Jewish bravado and arrogance. But in the 10th source, when Yaakov came to visit, when he came down to Mitzrayim, it says he visited Paro. Paro wanted to see this man. Who is this special man? And before Yaakov left, it said, and Yaakov blessed Paro. So the conversation, what blessing did he give to Paro? The blessing they gave to Paro. Now if you recall, remember the numbers, it was 7 years of plenty and then 7 years of famine, right? Did all 7 years of famine come? No. Yaakov comes at the end of the 2nd year of famine. When he comes, he blesses Paro and says, I give you a blessing that whenever you walk over to the Nile River will rise and will overflow at your command, because I will bless you. He took Paro over to the Nile River and he said, now, we want the Nile River, there's a hunger in the land. Wouldn't it be good if the Nile River now overflow and keep flowing and putting water all over this land? And that will effectively stop the hunger. Yes, so be it. That's what happened. The hunger stopped. When? The Jewish people put their feet on the land. Now, Paro's not an idiot yet. Okay? But he understood. He understood good and well. I was given immense power from this holy Jew because his family is over here. So it was clear when Yaakov empowers Paro, it's clear to Yosef and it's clear to Paro that it wasn't the Jews benefiting from the Egyptians, but it was the Egyptians benefiting from the Jews. You get this? And that's the message of, because of the Jewish people who are called Reshis, that's the way God created the world. Oh, was there a question? Yeah.
You may have touched on this somewhere before in our things, but it's very easy to understand that principle in those times, okay? Because the world was a small place as we know it.
Not that small.
Well,
no, okay.
Compared to today's world, it's definitely.
Okay.
So if the world is built for the existence of Jews, how do you and we can understand that, like where there's Jews in Europe and there's Jews in let's say in America and definitely in the Middle East. How do you explain that the world today, that really that's not even the world anymore? Like let's just to cut to the point, the rise of the Far East. Where does the Jews have any influence in that part?
Okay,
if the world is.
Okay, you're asking where do the Jews have influence where they don't live?
Yes, and there is no contact, let's say.
Okay, all right, that's a good question. Okay, 1 second. There was another. You had a question before? Yeah. What was it?
From what I've read, the Egyptians had to move because they had no money left to pay for the food that Joseph had in his father.
Well, no, what you read, that the Egyptians had to move. They had to sell their land, but they didn't have to move to a different part of the country. They sold their land. They could have worked on their land as indentured servants. That's all they had to do. Why did Joseph have to move them to a different part of the country? Right? They sold their land. Good, they sold their land. Who's going to work the land now? Someone's got to work the land, so you work it as an indentured servant. You don't have to send them 500 miles away and to put a different person from 500 miles onto the very piece of land you threw the guy out from. If anything, you should have the same guy who's there. I'll get to your question. I want to finish this main point, at least, because it's so important. Okay? So it says, Paro came who did not know Yosef. So what did we say? He didn't fulfill the decrees of Yosef. So now what were those decrees? Circumcision to the non-Jews, spread people around. He said he nullified those decrees. So those decrees, they signified a whole attitude towards the centrality of the Jewish people in history. That's what those decrees meant. Why can I wreak havoc with Egypt? Because you guys are benefiting from us, not us from you. Right? Yosef maintained, and Paro was convinced of this as well, for a good while, of our central role of history. Egypt gets wealthy only because they housed Jews in Egypt. That's how Yosef justifies his creeds to Paro. When Yosef interpreted the dreams, he was also interpreting the insight into the message. And the insight is that the Jews are going to go down to Egypt. Egypt's the host, and Egypt will be fabulously wealthy and comfortable host of the Jews. Good. So Paro accepted all this. Now, that's what the Tanchuma meant. The Egyptians want to start up with the Jews. So what's Paro's response? Paro's response wasn't, how can we do this? How can we not have gratitude to Joseph for what he did for us in the past? Gratitude, Shemot, he doesn't care about that. What's his real response? He says, in the Hebrew it says, Shoitim. Fools, we are living from them until now. He tells the Egyptians, don't you understand how to read history? You think they're a threat to our existence? Everything we have is because of the Jewish people. Our success, our strength, our wisdom, our advances. It's all because the Jews are there. You know, that's like killing the goose that lays the golden eggs. We may not like them, but you know what? We're rich because of them. Because we are hosting them, and that's why God is blessing us. Because the whole world was created for them. And right now they're here. So we're going to get it better than anybody else. The whole world. Why were we the ones to know the dream, what it meant? Why did God tell me give me these dreams? Nobody could explain except the Jew. And just in the right time? Well, the rest of the world falls apart. You know why? Because nowhere else will there be Jews. So now we've had them for a number of years and things are going well. Are you forgetting where our wealth came from? You're forgetting where all the blessings come from? If we try to destroy them, what has happened to every single nation on the face of the planet throughout the millennia of history to a nation that has thrown out Jews to their country? What happened shortly after 1492 when the Jews were thrown out of Spain? What happens in the next century? The Spanish Armada loses and Spain is never a power again in world history. Finished. right? You go through history, you see this all the time. And that doesn't mean to say every nation uses their power properly. That's a whole different story. But you find this all the time. People say, well, because the Jews left and the whole mercantile system ended, and therefore Spain crumbled. That might be the superficial way that God makes it happen. But it happens because there's no need for Spain anymore. And now they'd be like anybody else. That's what it means, Bishvil Yisrael, all history and all hashgacha, all of God's divine providence that we can thrive and survive is because of this. Okay, now we got to get to a much more important point. This is leading up to a very important point over here. So true, as long as we're in the Golus, as long as we live in the exile, and we thrive by getting from the non-Jews, then that really is the name of Yaakov. That's the Yaakov aspect of us. Holding on to the feet of Esav, being supported by God through Esav, right? We get everything from the non-Jews through God who are taking care of us. That's one way it works. That's not the optimal way for it to work. What's the optimal way for this thing to work? Is where should the Jews be? In Eretz Yisrael with the Beis HaMikdash. And then it reverses, and everything's given to us to distribute to the rest of the world, like you had in the days of King Solomon. Whereas tremendous wealth, and then from us, and that's where Mashiach will come. Everything from us will go from us directly, Hashem to us and to the rest of the world. When we don't have that, it goes in reverse order. It comes from Hashem through the Goyim to come to us. Right? So in the Golus, in the exile, it's given to us, but the way in which it's given to us is through the non-Jews. But remember, and this is so key, is that the non-Jewish host country that we live in are only trustees in order for God to give to us through them. And if they don't give to us, they won't have it themselves. And therefore, any non-Jewish king or president would be very clever to understand it's very self-destructive to start up against the Jewish people, and that was Paro's claim. That was Paro's claim. The United States has a lot of wealth. There's a lot of wealth. It's what? To make sure the Jews can live a Torah life in this world. Right? Okay, Sal, I know you can't hold it in, you're ready to explode.
First of all, Hashem should hear you, and should the Shabbos fall down the Karov that he's taking.
Amen, yeah.
One. But number two, according to what we're saying, specifically that, for example, the U.S. became a superpower in the mid-1900s with the influx of Jews. According to that, today, Israel should be number one superpower in the world. So,
first of all, according to today, Israel should be the number one superpower in the world. Once you bring up Israel, there's a whole bunch of other factors that we have to start considering that I don't want to get into because that's a whole other class. Okay? First of all, number one, let's look at the entire Middle East, my friend. And you tell me which country is far better off than anyone else in the Middle East. Israel. Interesting. I mean, it's not even close. Right? I'm not saying there aren't poor people in Israel, but you go to Arab countries, it's terrible. Where Arabs have more wealth and freedom and enjoyment in life in the whole Middle East, if not in Israel? Right? So number one, the Jews are doing very fine over there, and that's one reason why the Arabs want to destroy us. Now you don't have to be a superpower, but in the Middle East, we are the superpower. We really are the superpower in the Middle East. But the problem is now what changed, and Paro sees this, is that when the Jew wants to be like the Egyptian, then what happens? Right? Why would a Jew in his right mind want to be like an Egyptian? Why would a Jew give a bris milah? Why does, and what does it have to do with the death of Yosef? The answer is, if you want to be like an Egyptian, where do you think you're getting your existence from? If you think you're getting it from the Egyptian, then you want to be like him. So not only did the Egyptians make the mistake in thinking they could start up with the Jews, but the Jews made the same mistake. You follow? They made the same mistake. Because why would they want to not circumcise themselves? Because it must be they think they're getting directly from the Egyptians. The Egyptians thought, they're getting directly from us. They're sponging off of us. They're depleting our economy. Too many of these guys sitting in Kollel getting food stamps. They're depleting our economy. And the Jews say, we'll do better if we become more like them. So if the Jew thinks that Egypt is blessed, and therefore he says he wants to be the Mitzri, so what does that mean? It means the Jew himself does not believe in the centrality of the Jewish people. So what's going to be the next step? Then the hashgacha, that divine supervision, is not going to allow him to become that. And the Jew will be punished. Let's play it out. What happens if every Jew believes in that philosophy that we're getting from the Egyptian, and we should be like the Egyptian, and the more we're like them, the better off it will be for us? Let's play that out 100 years down the line, 20 years down. What does that mean? It means there are no Jews left. Right? You're not going to remain being a Jew. If you don't want to remain being a Jew, let's come back to that first pasuk. What's the purpose of the world? What's the purpose of the world? Jews. Everything around the world is blessed because of Jews. Now you're reading it the wrong way, and then you don't want to be Jews anymore? That means the world has no purpose, and that cannot be. So what's the only way? What's the only way that God can save the Jewish people? You're forcing God's hand. What's the only way? No?
The punishment to remind.
So the Medrash says, now you see the Medrash, it says once they stopped circumcisions, the Almighty, He nullified the love which the Egyptians had for them. All of a sudden, Egyptians wake up one day and become anti-Semites. Where did that come from? Has anti-Semitism ever been logical in the history of the world? Never. Every claim is a ridiculous claim. Ridiculous. In Spain, get rid of the Jews. Don't you realize they're the ones that made you rich? All the other Spaniards would rather, just have siestas. The Jews are working hard and bringing you wealth. And they're loyal people. You get a Mishigas, they have to be Christians. A lot that helped Spain. Right? They're your best people. They're so loyal. So where is it? It's not logical. Hashem puts Mishigasim in their brains. Why is Hashem doing that? Right? You come to a German Jew in 1939. Assimilated German Jew, 4 generations assimilated, and you've been a loyal German all your life, and you married a nice Schicksala, and you have all nice German kids. What do they want to kill you for? What did you do? You fought in World War I for them. You were loyal and everything. Where's the logic? There is no logic. Yes, there is a logic. It's God's logic, because I see you're all assimilating out. There'll be nothing left of you guys. And there'll be no more purpose for the world. So sadly, very sadly, Hashem says, you leave me no purpose. I have to mysteriously make all this change. And then Paro himself says, if that's the case, if they don't see themselves as special people, then you know what? I'll go back and be the king and tyrannize them. If they don't see them as special people, then I have nothing to offer them anymore. Then I might as well be the vehicle of what God wants for them to be destroyed or to oppress them. Right? So that's the change that happens in power. This is the great tragedy that the Jewish people go through, and for some reason they don't get it. They just don't get it, right? They don't get it. So there's only one solution. If Jews would learn to be Jews, then mysteriously the hatred would go away. That's how you stop anti-Semitism. You stop it by being Jews. And if you realize your purpose in the world, then the rest of the world has to benefit from that. And there's no need for anti-Semitism. But if you think that you're only blessed through them, then and as we see, Jews keep assimilating. So that's what's going to happen. What's going to happen when the last Jew assimilates in the United States 50 years from now? 100 years from now? You see as history is moving. The United States all the things are falling into place for the tremendous collapse of the great North America. Now these tremendous collapses take time, but it's happening. Why? Because there's less and less Jews. They're assimilating more. There's less and less Jews. Not going to need so much wealth in America anymore. Right? And as more Jews go into Israel, and if the political arena would shift to be more responsive to what Jews should be, then more wealth should come into Eretz Yisrael. Do you understand? But look at the other countries where the Jews are leaving. They lose their power. They lose their power. The Jew, so if a goy doesn't know this, it's not such a terrible thing. because the Goyim don't really wreak havoc with the equation. The only one who wreaks havoc with the equation is the Jew. You see, and that's where the change takes place, right? So now, all right, let's just quickly do the last. Does this make sense? It's not politically correct what I'm saying. It's not popular, but that's the emes, and the emes is never appreciated.
So one little question.
Yeah. Okay.
What would have been the catalyst to allow the Jews to leave Egypt if it hadn't been for the fact that they were subjected to it?
What would have been the catalyst? They didn't have to leave. The plan, Hashem's plan was, when he made the covenant of the PARSHA with Avram, was they have to be in Egypt. They have to be somewhere else for 400 years. And the plan was stay in Egypt for 400 years and live as Jews for 400 years. Keep circumcising yourself. Keep acting like Jews in the non-Jewish world. Don't assimilate. And then when 400 years are up, you're just going to say, we'd like to leave. And you're going to walk right out and go back to Eretz Yisrael without having to make a fight.
Why would they want to leave?
Because they understand that the Jews are the central part of world history. And you do whatever the Jews want, because that's the goal of. And if they will go to Israel, and their blessings from Israel will come to the whole world, the blessings will come to the whole world. They wouldn't. That's how they would have left, and that's what Hashem was very happy to do. But when the Jews didn't do that, then we have to have the anti-Semitism, and then Parah, of course, takes it to the extreme where he should have stopped at a certain point, and he didn't. So God says, "Now I got to take the Jews out, and now I will destroy Egypt because you wouldn't let them out." So that's how it came out, and that's what the Rashi is saying. God counts us because we're like the stars. What does that mean? What are the stars? What do you know about stars? So it says in the Tehillim, Hashemayim misaprim kavod kel. The heavens relate God's honor. Ma'aseh yadav magid harikia. The heavens speak of God's handiwork. If you want to know there's a God, look out in the world. Look up in the heavens. Look at the stars. Look at the billions of stars. Only a God can do this, right? So just like the stars speak about a God, so therefore the same thing with the Jewish people. The fact He counts us even after we're dead, even though He counted us when we're alive, is because we're compared to the stars. The stars are the glory of the King. They describe the King's presence. The heavens bespeak His glory. The Rambam says, you want to come to believe in God? Look at His world. You look at His world, you know there has to be a God. There has to be a God. He made such a beautiful world, such a complex world. It's unbelievable. Hashem's presence is in the world wherever you look. Guess what? There's another way of seeing God in the world. Look at the Jewish people. You see people who do acts of kindness that are beyond human capacity. Where do they come to do that from? They come because they're people of God. They have a Jewish neshama. So the reason we are central for part of history and everything has to go around us is because to the extent that we exist just like the heavens speak out God, so do Jews who live as Jews speak out about God. And therefore what's going to happen is, if Paro fails to recognize that in us, then is he going to turn around tomorrow and say, I don't believe in God either? And that's what the Medrash says. When you hit the Duke, you're going to hit the king one day. When a person wants to go against Jews, what is he really saying? He wants to go against God. Because Jews really represent what God is all about. And if you go and attack the Jews, that means it's only your excuse for attacking God as well. And all the people in the name of God who killed Jews really never believed in God either. Just a distorted vision of what God is all about. So if that happens, then Hashem says, okay, this is what Paro is doing now. I know. If he's attacking Jews now, one day you're going to come and say, God says, who's God? Because once the Jew, so look at the domino effect. Jew doesn't live like Jew. The non-Jew says, well, what's so special about him anymore? Right? You don't sense any godliness. The Jew just tries to destroy the Jew. That's part of the equation God's put us in. And once he destroys the Jew, he says, well, who's this God? And that's not good for the non-Jewish world either, to not believe in a God. Right? So that is what this, and that's what this whole book of Shemos is all about. That whole book of Shemos is with the Jewish people, and this is really the challenge and the dilemma of living in the Golus. And this is the relevance for us. We are no different than the Jew in Egypt. Right? And we have to ask ourselves every day we go out to work, whatever we do, when we receive from someone else, is the non-Jew the real reality, or is God the real reality? Right? That's what Golus means. We think it's a non-Jew. What is it? You can live where you live. It doesn't mean if you're an exile or not, but where do you think you're being nourished from? If you think you're being nourished from the Canadian government, then you're living in Golus. And if you live in Israel and you think you're living from the government, you're still in Golus. If you know you're living from Hashem, then you're not in Golus no matter where you are. And when we live in Golus, we can't make that mistake. That mistake is too much is riding on that line. So we should appreciate the fact that just as the Jew in Egypt, as long as we kept to our Jewish identity and we were the beautiful stars, then you know what? The non-Jew respects us and will realize that we're blessed because of us. And when we change, they change. So we have to work on ourselves and maintain our standards and do the things that are really Jewish and proud of it, and you have to mamish believe that Canada is blessed for one reason, so I can be an observant Jew.